Right. Hello, everyone. Hi, Alex. So I'm Robbie. I'm a coach, and I'm here today with Alex to record some of my work, a coaching session. And I think I had this idea, came out of some coaching that I did for a couple of reasons. But the one that sticks with me now, or stuck with me as I was reflecting on this before, is that coaching is just a really hard thing to understand, and it's a really hard thing to describe what it is. And really the only way you understand coaching fully is to experience it. And that sounds weird because it's just asking questions and listening, right? And it kind of is. And yet the power of it can be really spectacular. I've found both in my work as a coach and also as a client. And it's nice to be able to share some actual coaching, which is what we're going to do today, both for me and for the coaching as a whole. And the great side effect is we'll get to showcase someone who's doing great work in the world as well. So Alex and I have known each other for quite a while now. When Alex started about probably 10 years ago, started a community for young charity trustees when we were both young. And at least I was, I don't know if you were at the time, at least I was a trustee of a charity. And now we're both slightly less young, and we're both entrepreneurs, and it's a fun thing. And over the last couple of years, we've connected more and more. We've done one coaching session before, but also have just been in touch and exchanging ideas over the last couple of years. And when I sat down and thought about who it would be fun to have on a call like this, Alex was one of the first people that came to mind. And a few months later, we've made it happen, which is fun. I think I said this on the other coaching session that I've recorded that's online at the moment, which is that I always wonder when I'm watching something like this, someone doing coaching live, do they know? Did they know when it was happening? What was going to happen with the video, and what's going on? And so I just want to share that contracting so that anyone who's watching knows. And basically Alex knows that we're going to be recording this, obviously, because I'm saying it now. And yeah, what a shock. And we've both got veto power over this call being shared, which means that if I say something that I think is so stupid that I can't possibly share it with people who might want to work with me, then I will veto. And if we go to somewhere that Alex doesn't want to share for one reason or another, then of course he has the power to say that as well, after the call and at any point in the future. But the aim is that we'll just do some work today, and we've done a little bit of coaching before, and we know each other well enough to have the trust to do this, but we don't know where it's going to go. And the aim is just to give Alex the best experience of coaching and help him as much as I can, and see where we get to. And then the last thing I say, I think I said this last time, we're recording on Zoom at the moment, which is an amazing online video calling platform. But in order to get both of us on the screen at the same time for the recording, I have to have both of us on the screen, on my screen now, which I find distracting because I have a strange compulsion to look at myself, but also which means that I won't be looking straight at the middle because Alex is on the left-hand side of my screen. So if anyone's watching why is Robbie watching Alex's right ear or something, then that's what's actually happening. And I need to get my pen because I usually take some notes when I'm coaching. But other than that, I think that's my intro. So, the last thing, no, there is one more thing. So, which I can say to you now live, Alex, because one of the things that happened after I shared the coaching session that I did with Ed a few months ago was that lots of people said to me afterwards, and I was able to pass this on to Ed. Lots of people said thank you to Ed for sharing and being willing and brave and vulnerable enough to do that. So I want to say that to you in advance. And the truth is, it's true whether or not we share this, because it's a kind of weird thing to be doing. And I've got some nerves about it. I was saying that to Alex just before we jumped on and started the recording. And I'm sure that you've got a little bit of, those feelings as well in some ways. And that's quite normal actually in coaching, especially the first time I meet a client. I often share that. It's like, I'm sure you've got some nerves because you're having a weird conversation with a sort of semi-stranger, and I have those nerves as well, and that's part of the fun, I think. So that's the intro, and then Alex, we've got some time now to make as useful as possible for you. I know you've had to think about how you want to use it, and that might be the place to start, is just, how can I support you this morning?
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. This is a really exciting opportunity, and I think one of the things for me is just having the space to be able to talk about things is the thing that I perhaps find most powerful about my limited experience of being coached so far.
Mm.
Um, because we all have busy lives and are doing different things. And so, in thinking about what it was I wanted to talk to you about today, I think it really helped focus my mind. And I made sure I gave myself the space to do that. So this morning I actually had breakfast at Wetherspoons because I like their refill coffees. And it gave me the opportunity to sort of have that space to just think to myself, how would I get most value out of this session, and what am I thinking about at the moment? And there's two main things.
I'll tell you what, I'm actually going to catch you before you
Yeah.
get into them, right? Because I just think what you've shared is really interesting and says a lot about you, right? Which is there's an opportunity here to get something useful, and the limited experiences, talking things through, having this space to speak and think is valuable. But actually, I love this. Even before, this is such a great thing for you to share. Like even before we've done the work, it's had some value.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've taken that on yourself and done the reflection, and that's great. And not every the reason I'm sharing it really is you, right? Is that not everyone would do that. And in fact, I don't often. I show up to my coaching knowing it's useful, but the manicness of life means that I haven't always sat down and got that clarity. And it's powerful without that. But I think, great work on taking that time.
Thank you. I think it's also that I'm the sort of person, and I think this will come up in the discussion today, that I'm involved in quite a lot of different types of things. And so for me, sometimes I have to be a bit like, okay, I'm in this headspace. These are the things that I'm talking about. These are the things that I'm thinking about now. So having that moment of clarity really, really helps me. And the first thing I want to talk about seems on the surface quite simple, but I think really speaks to the direction in which I want to take my work forward. And that is one of the things that I've realised through. So I've got a business mentor at the moment. I'm really lucky. I'm living in Sheffield, and there's business mentors provided by a program for free. And I've got a brilliant business mentor. It's going really well. One of the things I'm realizing when I'm planning and budgeting for the next few years is that if I'm not careful, all of my work is going to be one-to-one. And the reason that's an issue is because when you're working with people one-to-one, you might only get to that stage after you've built up a relationship with them, but also it places pressure because there's only a small amount of eggs in the basket. So what I'd ideally like to end up with is kind of a suite of different products and offerings from me that gives me the opportunity to work with people at different touch points, I suppose. And what I'm concerned about or thinking about is that I need to bring in money in the short to medium term. And the best way to bring in that money is to get one-to-one clients. But in order to achieve my ambitions for my business and for my life and to do the sort of work I want to, I need to spend the time to create those products. And talking about space, it's partly about giving myself the space in order to do that. But it's a headspace thing sometimes, but it's also a financial thing. It's kind of what's good for my business in the short term and what's good for my business in the long term feel like two different things. And I just wanted to play around with a bit how I feel like that and what I could do to take that forward.
Okay, so yeah, I hear it, right, and I feel some of the challenges around work, right? It is a challenging thing, and especially if you work with a relatively small number of one-to-one clients, then it's great and it's terrible because you can quite swiftly get quite a few people in, and then quite swiftly you can go from having a thriving practice or business to having very little work, and so and I feel the pressure of the kind of immediate financial pressure. I hear that as well. And then, right, I get this idea. There's some work you could do now or soon, which you can see strategically. It's very valuable as you get further out. But the immediate pressure of, as we all have, of money, of rent or mortgage or all those things makes giving yourself the space for those things hard because the returns are long-term, long game returns.
Yeah, a long game return, and also I think it's an unknown return. It's an unknown return in the sense that, if I go to get a one-to-one client now, it might take me time to get that client, but unless that client ends up being a horrible person, they'll pay me some money and I know I'll get some money. Whereas if I put a course out there, like an online course, which is one of the types of things I want to do, it's entirely possible nobody will buy the course. And I'm not saying that being down on myself, I just mean you leave it open to that possibility. So
or it's possible no one will buy it for 10 years, right?
Absolutely. And it might be for good reasons they don't buy it. It might be that I'm not experienced enough and I don't provide the value. So I'm not sort of knocking other people for that. I'm just saying that if I put the time into those things, I can see that even if I don't make money from them, I will get a lot of learning. And in the future, I'll make money from them and a lot of good things will happen. But it's not even, I can say with surety that in 1 year, if I do X things, I will receive Y income. In the same way that if I did that with one-to-one clients and said, I want to acquire blah one-to-one clients in 6 months, I could kind of roughly work out the income I could make and be reasonably confident about that, if that makes sense.
Right, and let me just check, this is more for my information actually. It sounds like actually in terms of acquiring these one-to-one clients, you have confidence that you can do that. Is that right?
I think I have confidence I could do that if I focused on that.
Uh-huh.
So I wouldn't have much confidence that I could do that alongside doing the other things. So I feel that in order to do any aspect well, I would need to focus on it quite well. And I have a problem with focus, basically. I know it's potentially a weakness of mine. And so if I was doing nothing but one-to-one, even though tomorrow I couldn't go out and get the one-to-one clients in the way that I want to, I could do that in 6 months if I did nothing but focus on that. So it's the balance between those things, I think. It's do I increase all my skills a little bit over a smorgasbord of options? Or do I say, this is the one that's going to make me the money, and to have a thriving business, this is what I should do? And it's I think I know what I want the answer to be, but I don't know if I'm kidding myself.
What do you want the answer to be?
I want the answer to be that I do a lot of different things. And I think there's a number of reasons why that be the case. One is financially, it just makes more sense to not have all your eggs in one basket. The second thing is financially, it makes sense to have a suite of different options that you can move clients through, because quite often if somebody buys your book, they're then more likely to hire you for one-to-one coaching or support. And the other thing is that I'm an ambitious person who my motivation isn't really financial. I'd like to earn a good income, but it's very much about sharing my ideas with the world. And even if I worked with one-to-one clients and I had no leisure time, for the rest of my life, surely the amount of one-to-one clients would be in the thousands at best that I could get to for the rest of my working life. Whereas I could do one course, and that course could get to the same amount of people for one piece of work 1 year.
Well, and you have, right? You have created a course which has reached thousands of people.
And I have. No, I have. And I've created a free course. So I've tested the water a bit with these things, and I can see that they can happen. But I think there's in order to move things forward the way that I want to, there's a whole line of things that have to happen. So even simple practical things like I need to buy video editing software. And I know that not just because I want it to be good quality, but the main criticism that's come back from my free course is that it's boring, not because hopefully I'm too boring a person, but because it's basically me talking. It's not me talking over slides. It's no jazzy special effects. It's just me talking. And so that's the main criticism. So I know what I need to do, but that also requires an upfront investment, not just of time, but to buy that video editing, maybe a better camera, something like that,
Yeah, and also, it would take time to learn that and to get, to do that learning, and possibly money to do the learning as well, depending on how you wanted to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm getting a feel for it. It's tricky. Like you can see this. I'm glad you're smiling as well. I can feel because I can feel a little bit of pressure
Yeah.
about this kind of decision, but
Yeah.
it does feel like the reason I'm smiling is I think it feels exciting as well.
I think it does, and I think it's a strange one because in bringing this up, I sort of thought I feel like I know the answer, or I feel like I know where I would like the answer to go. So it's strange bringing it here in a coaching situation because I was thinking to myself, it's a bit scary in the sense that I know where I want the answer to go because I actually want to do all those things.
Yeah.
Imagine we have this conversation and you basically make me think, oh, that's never going to happen. You know, and I know you well enough to know you wouldn't do that in a harsh way, but bringing something up where you already know the answer is scarier in a way than doing it where you legitimately haven't thought through what the answer might be.
Right. Well, and what I want to share is like, and here's the distinction I think, which is important. And you know this, but it's like, I'm not gonna make you think anything.
No.
And there's two ways we can look at this, right? And this is the next question for you, really.
Yeah.
We can look at this as this is where you want to get to. You know the answer. Yeah. How do you want to get there? Yeah. Or we can look at it as, and I'm exaggerating these frameworks slightly, but like we can look at it as, I think this is what I want, but I want to know it in a different way. Like those that, you know, which, and only the second one might lead to you ending this call thinking, yeah, it's not a broad business. It's just a one-to-one business, or it's not a one-to-one, just an online training.
Yeah.
And I guess that and because the work that I love to do and the work that coaching is often about is understanding what someone's dream is and then bringing it close, right?
Yeah.
In whatever way that is. And what I'm hearing from you is that you know what the dream is.
I think I do, but as you were saying, as you were sort of presenting those options, I had a realization that I think my reticence is actually about something else as well, like on a deeper level, that I didn't really think of when I wrote it down. And the reason for that is, you know, at the moment I don't actually need to earn lots of money because my rental situation isn't such that it's very, very high. I don't have huge expenses. So actually, to survive, I don't need to bring in loads of money. So I should be able to give myself that space. Plus, my wife's very, very supportive. I think that part of the reason, which I haven't thought up till now, but I feel reticent about it, is that I have an issue with seeing myself as a legitimate businessman. And the reason for that is, you know, my background is coming from the charity sector, coming from being a social entrepreneur. And so for me, all the things around feeling I have a legitimate business is kind of an issue. Now, I objectively, I have a legitimate business. I make money from my business. I can see the ways in which that's going to happen. But one of the nice things about having a business mentor is it's made me think more critically about that. And also related to that, and you know this, but because I've moved to one place where I feel like I'm going to settle down at least for a bit, compared to I've been traveling around quite a bit, it now feels like an opportunity to focus on my business. So to briefly translate that back to why it's important for this is because if I try to create all these different things that I want to, even though I want to do it, my concern is that I'm dabbling. And my concern is that I'm dabbling in two ways. One, that I might be avoiding the sort of sales side of things that I find harder. But secondly, that if I'm doing lots of things that are not money-making activities, that is not a business. As in, that is not a business if it never makes money. Of course, businesses do all sorts of things that will make money in the future, and they gamble and they don't know if something's going to happen. But in terms of feeling like a legitimate businessman, just doing one-to-ones for the rest of my life would definitely make me feel like a legitimate businessman. I know there's a lot of different things in that, but I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah, I think it's important. It sounds important to you. There's a part of this which is feeling like a legitimate businessman.
And also, I think it's then to sort of unpack, what do I think of as a legitimate business? So, for example, me and you are both entrepreneurs, but we're entrepreneurs in a very modern sense, I think. Even us having this conversation, until more recently, there haven't been the sort of perhaps business role models in the sort of business that I want to have. And now there's a lot online. But I think my idea of a businessman is probably in itself reasonably outdated. And so the pressure that I put on myself to live up to that ideal is not even something I probably want. Again, if that makes any sense. Like,
yeah, it makes real sense.
And so when you were giving me the options, it made me think that actually the issue isn't so much about the financial thing, because even as I was planning that and planning to speak to you about it, I thought, but if I'm being honest, I can take that financial hit because those expenses aren't so big. And because I'm not really motivated by money. And I think overall, it would be good for my business long term. I think my problem is more about if I dabble and create these things and spend more time without selling things, I'll wonder whether psychologically I'm just procrastinating.
So if you worry that you're just psychologically procrastinating, what makes that a problem?
Oh, that's a difficult. Could you possibly explain that question a bit more? I'm not. It was reasonably not vague, but I was like, yeah, I'm not sure. Can you rephrase that maybe?
Yeah, let me just check in. It might be the wrong question.
No.
So I guess where I am is it sounds like it might. So we could do some work, right, on like the suite of different products, clarifying that, or how we get there, and we could try and get to a decision about, which it sounds like is what you're talking about at the start of the conversation, about what do I do now? Like, do I dive into one-to-one, or how do I hold one-to-one and the other suite of products and ideas? How do I hold them in the short term, and how do I hold them in the long term? But what you're sharing now is there's this other thing going on, which might be the problem. Yeah. Like if problem, right? Because
no. I get it.
We both know that you're in a wonderful position and lots of things are going really well, and I don't want to ignore that. But it might be that actually the thing you want to work on in this conversation is this idea about being a legitimate businessman.
It's that one. I didn't think it would be that one because I literally didn't think, although I know that I have that sort of fear or that concern like in the background, I didn't think that's what we'd be talking about now, and I didn't relate it to this situation.
So the question then, which goes back to what I was asking before, is
got you.
What makes it the issue now? Like, tell me more about that.
I think for me, it's probably because I feel like there's two ways at looking at the kind of narrative of my working life. And in terms of the two things I was bringing today, the second one, which I think we'll touch on in some aspects now anyway, is about the integration of myself into my work. So the sort of totality of the way that I exist and share things with other people in a professional context. And I think this is kind of related to that. So the two narratives that you could tell about my working life, and I suspect you could do this for many people, is someone looking at it through a negative lens would say, okay, you've got this person who has done very different types of things. So I studied politics and was a political intern. I was a teacher in Japan. I was a private tutor in London. I worked in the charity sector. I've been a digital nomad and traveled. I've got my own business. So it almost seems like somebody who is kind of flitting between different things and kind of, a jack of all trades but master of none type of thing. The other narrative that could be provided, the more positive one, and the thing that made me want to start my business in the first place, is that I can see what I call a sort of golden thread running through my work. And that is the idea of influence, which is one of the things I work on now. And then it shows that, politics is about influence. Teaching is about influencing people. The charity sector are trying to influence people. And I worked in fundraising when I started. Starting up your own business is about influencing people. And so I think that probably the tension for me is that while I feel overall that I am happy with the way that my career's gone in many, many ways, I think that legitimate businessman thing is partly my stereotype of what a businessman is, and partly this feeling that if an outsider looked at my career, it might look like I was dabbling. Okay? And that dabbling goes back to someone who thought that I'd been dabbling in my career might say, you should focus on the one-to-one, rather than you should do all these other things that may or may not bear fruit.
So it's great. Thanks for sharing, and again, bringing awareness that you've got, and clearly the reflective practice that you have works, because you're able to see these things from these two different sides.
Yeah.
You know that underneath, and it's funny actually, I didn't say this to you. As I was like logging in for this call or something, I double clicked on the wrong thing. I clicked on a file, the top file in my like documents, instead of the bottom folder. The bottom folder is where I had a Zoom recordings and that kind of thing, and the top file, it turned out, was a PDF of yours, which I didn't even remember having. I'm pretty sure, like 5 ways to increase your influence.
Oh yeah.
And one of them is like focus on your strengths. Okay. And you know that, right? So I can
yeah.
say like, but because you've done that work, you can see this thing from 2 sides.
Yeah.
And I can give you, if you want, right, how I see the dabbler in you, because we've been online, right? For a long time, and actually, some of the things that I do in my business are copied exactly off you, in different ways, because of what I've seen. But when you say an outsider might see me as someone who is dabbling, my question, the question that comes up is, how much of you sees you as someone who's dabbling?
Oh, that's a great question. The honest answer is I don't know. But because I think that I was sort of writing down what I think my 2 sort of major weaknesses were the other day in a professional sense. And I would say that there were procrastination, which affects so many people, and a lack of focus. And I think that overall, I feel like I don't mind, I'm proud of the things I've done in the past, but I feel like I'm at a time in my life, I'm at an age, I'm in a situation where I want to have a bit more stability and bring a few things together. And so I don't really feel that my procrastination and lack of focus up to this point has really hindered me. If anything, it's brought me into lots of wonderful new experiences. However, I worry that if for the rest of my working life, which considering the way the pension age is going will be the rest of my life, I think that I kind of am concerned that I can see a situation for myself where I chase lots of shiny, bright bits of paper, and I continue in the way that I have been and get involved in all sorts of exciting things, but I don't make the mark on the world that I want to make. And I don't necessarily, also, I would like to be more financially stable in the sense that flitting between different things can be difficult financially. Sort of reinventing yourself and trying new things can be difficult financially. And so I want to sort of both focus and bring those things together, but still allow that space for the magic to happen. So I'm rebelling against, I definitely don't want to just have one-to-one clients for the rest of my life. I'd find that really boring, unless they're the most wonderful people in the universe, perhaps. But that's not what I want to do. That's not what calls to me, basically. But I kind of, because I feel this tension between focus, it feels to me almost like there's a tension between focus and magic, So there are some people out there who their magic is in their focus. And this could be traditional things like a surgeon, or it could be somebody whose business, even like an internet-based business, is very, very specific. And they found something they love and they want to do. For me, the magic is in the sort of blurred lines. The magic is in the cutting away of the silos between different people. The magic is in meeting people with entirely different expectations, backgrounds, and careers to me. But it's how do I integrate that with something that is going to make me feel focused so I achieve various things I want to achieve and brings me in enough money.
And is that the question for today? Like,
yeah, I think the question for today, or the thing that's sort of, firstly, I think it was critically important that I think that behind my reticence in these areas and in introducing and working on all these projects, it is actually behind it more about that legitimate businessman, what I think I should be doing thing.
but I hear another thing, which is that I hear a story which is something like, and you say, this is one of those times when if I get this wrong, like tell me.
Yeah.
You say you can see other people whose businesses are based on focus and the magic of the focus, but I hear a story which is magic is about freedom, not about focus, something like that.
I would say you're right, but I would say I believe that for me, not for everyone. As in, right, I believe. Sorry. I wasn't sure if you were making that point. Like, I believe that for some people, the magic is in the focus. But for me, when I think about the things that I'm proud of and that make me stand out, it's my ability to link different things together, to network, to link different people together, and the fact that I don't meet many people who are genuinely passionate about as many things as I am, and I'm passionate, and we were having this conversation a bit before, but I noticed that in a lot of areas of my life, completely non-professional, like I reasonably follow a number of different sports. I'm not a particularly sporty person myself, but I'm a person who just, if I'm curious about something, I'm really curious about it, and I'm really quite curious about lots of things. And that's what I find exciting about life. And yet, when I see a lot of people being successful, and successful is a difficult thing to unpack as well, but I see a lot of people who are reasonably focused on one thing. And I don't know whether it's a capitalist thing or it's just something about society right now, but I don't always think that society rewards the polymath, or society rewards, and by rewards, it might be financially rewards, it might be status, I don't know. There are some people who have a profile which means that they're almost like allowed to dabble in lots of different things and still be quite successful at it. However, I think for most people, they're good at one thing or a small number of things, and if they pursue that with all their passion and their heart, that's when they do well. And I find it hard to be like, I really want to focus on one thing. Apart from influence, it's definitely a huge thing. But around that, there's so many directions I could go into, which is one of the things I struggle with, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky thing. I can hear the kind of trickiness of it, and there's a lot of stuff involved in it, including ideas about what a businessman is, finance, making the mark you want to on the world, and your general interest and curiosity about like everything, which is interesting. So I want to pull the conversation in a little bit, just to get us some focus for the remainder of the call. Focus, eh? You probably need like extra of this, maybe. I don't know. Because we've explored, like, it already feels like the goalposts for this conversation have moved slightly. At the start, it felt like it was more about the suite of different products and the steps to take at different times and those kind of things, and and sharing your ideas with the world and how you do that. And then this idea about dabbling, avoiding sales, is this a legitimate business? And then this piece at the end about magic and focus. So take a moment now. What is it that you'd like to have by the end of the conversation?
I think tying those things together and introducing that idea I was saying about like integration, which I'd love to explore a little bit. One thing that I always struggle with is where my motivation comes from. And because I struggle with where my motivation comes from, I sometimes struggle with what direction my ambition and my efforts should go. So, for example, I think it would be a useful exercise to understand, if we took it aside from a financial, what would be wrong with having 1,000 one-to-one clients, and that was my life's work. And I think if we can explore, if we can get to a stage where I have a greater understanding of that, because that's not the option I want, but I don't really understand why I don't want it. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And I think if I got to a bit of a better understanding of that, it would give me an understanding of how can I move forward doing the work I want to with creating all these different products and just feel a bit more at ease about doing that. Like being a bit less hard on myself, potentially.
Right, I hear that. So it's like there's a sense that actually underneath that you're not quite sure where the motivation really comes from.
Yeah.
And that if you had a greater understanding of that, which might come from answering the question, what's wrong with having 1,000 one-to-one clients over the next, I don't know, 40 years, 50, if there is going, that I've influenced and enabled them to influence.
Yeah.
And I've had that great impact, and it's been 1,000 of them over these decades. What's wrong with that will lead us somehow towards the motivation, and that enables you in the present to understand the direction that you should take next more and be more at ease. And I get that, right? It sounds to me like, and I understand this myself, it's like there's just a little worry in the back of your mind, something's not right about that plan or about the way that I'm working now.
And I think the worry comes from, so there's a legitimate businessman thing, and there's also the thing that I worry that I am taking the easy decision. And I think over the course of my career and my life, I've been a person who generally have not, despite being a procrastinator, has generally not taken the easy decision. So I've constantly pushed myself and tried different things. I would like to I don't want to have a life necessarily of always being ambitious, because actually, and it'd be a big discussion, but I've achieved a lot of my ambitions already. A lot of the things that I wanted to do, I've done. Things that were personally important to me, like self-publishing a book, I've done. So actually, strangely enough, I don't have loads of ambitions left, but my main ambition is to have an ongoing business. My main ambition is that I want to have a business that I feel proud of, that feels to me, in whatever sense I understand it, a legitimate business. And that means that I have space to do other things that are important to me, other non-work things or other opportunities. And so I think that really is the question about why it is that I wouldn't want to just have all those one-to-one clients.
Yeah, no, I get this, right? And I can feel the kind of value in exploring. I just want to do a check, which is a question that I sometimes ask. Like, maybe that is already in there, but what would have to happen by the end of this call for us to press stop on the recording, and then you sit there and go, holy shit, Robbie, that was extraordinary?
To be honest with you, and I don't want to suggest the rest of the call doesn't get me magical, but I think it's already happened. So for me, it was the legitimate businessman thing.
Okay.
For me, once I realized that when I was explaining to you about what it was that I wanted to do, that the practicalities of setting up the other things I want to do are not intimidating to me.
Right.
They're
you can do those things.
Actually, I would find it quite exciting if I gave myself that space. I thought it was a financial thing. And then I realized it's not really a financial thing. It's a psychological thing. It's a how I feel about myself and about the world thing that would stop me doing that. And that realization is really helpful because in a number of ways. One, because then I focused on that issue and I can see how big an issue that is. But two, I can kind of then start to question how legitimate it is. So when I said, for example, my idea of what a businessman is probably quite outdated. So firstly, if it's outdated, why am I looking at that? And secondly, what should I care if other business people do it this way? So I feel that the issue that I'm sort of dealing with has gone from big to something a bit tighter. to something that I can grapple with in a slightly different way and maybe do some practical things about. So for me, that was the magic. Like if I come away with one thing from this call, that was really, really useful.
Great. So one of the reasons I'm smiling then, this is a total aside, this is not coaching. Like I just had this thought then of like, yeah, I wonder what would happen if you just started wearing a suit to sitting in your like home office every day. Like I think like that is like, I think you should do that for a week and see what happens. Like just dress up like a legitimate businessman, right? You can unpack that yourself. I just think it'd be really funny to see like, do you do more work? Do you hate it? Like it's one of those things. I'm not going to say you have to do it, but it's one of those. It came to me and it made me smile, and I thought I've got to throw this challenge at Alex and see what happens. You could also write some great. You could write some great content for your online courses based on that challenge.
Yeah, I think I'd feel like I'm a bit older than you, so you might not know, but Mr. Ben. Do you remember Mr. Ben? He was like a cartoon character who did he do different jobs each day or so? Like he dressed up and like that's what I think I'd feel like this. No, that's fascinating, Ray, because in a way that would be a legitimate thing to try. But in a way, the fact that feels quite absurd to me is an interesting example of if someone said, "What's a legitimate businessman?" that would be in my head. But do I feel that I want to do that? And do I feel I want to get dressed up like that at home? Probably not. You know, so...
Right, I've got this sense that underneath, one of the things you'll discover is, like, it's like I heard this coach, Robert Holden, he was telling a client story about a perfectionist client. And he asked the client, well, what's better than perfection? It was for a talk, right? It was like... it was like a talk. This guy was giving a talk, and the anxiety that he had about this talk that he was giving, you know, in the presentation, I can't remember, a lecture in front of hundreds of people, was enormous because he was like trying to get the perfect talk. And Robert Holden says to him, well, what would be better than a perfect talk? And the guy like takes some time and comes back. Maybe first of all, he probably says like, well, an imperfect talk, like guessing that that's the right answer. But as Robert Holden's like, no, take the time. Like, I mean this, maybe there isn't anything better, but if there's something better, what's the perfect talk? What's better than the perfect talk?
Okay.
In the end, the guy comes back and, you know, and it's, you know, just a beautiful moment, says, well, it would be a talk from the heart. Right. And this guy has never done this before. And so it opens up some work for them together. And I'm just wondering if what you would discover from the question, what's better than a legitimate business?
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. That is really, really helpful. It's fascinating in a number of ways because one of the things that comes up time and time again through my work of influence is authenticity. And for me, I think that there's probably a tension there between what I believe is an authentic. So instead of legitimate, if we use the word authentic, I think it would work well too. So we said an authentic businessman. What do I think of as an authentic businessman? And then what do I think, what does it mean for me to be authentically living my own life? And what do I do if there's a juxtaposition between those two things? How do I deal with that? So it might be I change my idea of an authentic businessman, or it might be that I just say I'm never going to be that type of person, and I'm okay with that. Or it might be I'm stressed for the rest of my life. Like we don't know where it's going to go. But I think if I challenge my idea of authenticity for the business that I'm thinking about, and I try to match that with what I believe to be my authentic self, that's the tension I'm feeling, I suppose.
But if it's matched to your authentic self, and I think you've done a lot of work to understand that, how can you running a business and being a man not make you an authentic businessman?
Because I think one of the things that I find quite difficult, perhaps, about authenticity is that in most, but not all aspects of my life, I feel that I live my authentic self. So an example where I don't is that I would say that I don't get particularly involved in political debates, despite being very political. That's just something that I decide most of the time to leave aside. But I think that in most ways I feel like I'm being quite authentic, but that I feel that communicating my authenticity is a difficult thing. And it's a difficult thing coming back to this idea of focus. So let's suppose you have somebody who is really passionate about teaching. So I have a friend who's really, really passionate about teaching and is on the Teach First program, for example. Now, when he speaks about teaching and about his classes and everything, that passion, you can see how authentic he is and how he puts everything into his work. Now, he's a person with other passions. He's not only passionate about teaching, but that's authentic. So I think in that situation, someone can say, he's a teacher, tick. He has a passion about teaching, tick, and he's putting that into action, tick. With me, because I'm involved in a lot of different types of things and have been in my career, I worry that that dabbling thing, or that kind of trying this and trying that, and the way that when I meet one person, I say, oh, hi, I'm the influence expert. And when I meet someone else, I say, oh, I'm involved with young charity trustees. I feel that that feels to me like inauthentic. Even though they're all parts of me, I feel that if people looked at my LinkedIn profile, I teach people about LinkedIn and I'm happy with my profile, but someone might get the impression that I'm kind of have done loads and loads of different things, but they might interpret that negatively. And so for me, it's maybe not being able to control what other people think about me. It's not just about my inner confidence or feeling about myself.
I love the dialect. Like, I'm just getting a real feel for it, and there's so much complexity in what you just said. Yeah. Let me try and get it. What did you say? You said not being able to control what other people think of me.
Yeah.
Like, I want to give that back to you because.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's like, I can feel the depth of that, right?
Yeah.
It's a powerful thought to have, and it's tough whenever that's what we want to do, right? And we do want to do it because for all sorts of reasons, probably, but almost, I mean, maybe not everyone and everyone in different ways, but at some point, we could play the evolutionary game, right? What a powerful thing for children to be able to do in order to stay alive.
Yeah.
Control and influence what their parents think of them so that they can be fed and not be cast out of the tribe, and in all sorts of other ways that might show up. But it's a tricky one to be facing when you're an entrepreneur. Often those things that you've got come up, and
hugely. And also, I think this is something that's come up time and time again for me in my career, and my self-reflections on my life and my career is this idea of sort of, and it goes back to the idea earlier of why am I ambitious? What am I kind of moving towards? But I think my sort of ideal would almost be that I did something where a decent amount of people that I interacted with just thought either, oh, you're that person who does that, or once I mentioned that I did that, they kind of thought, okay, here's somebody who, I don't know, is worthy of my respect or interesting to talk to. Right now, that sounds. I realise that sounds a bit weird, and just because somebody has a particular position, they shouldn't be worthy to talk to. But I've seen it in two specific ways in my career. The first one is that I went to Cambridge. So when I tell people that I went to Cambridge, and I don't think, from a particularly typical background for someone who went to Cambridge, but if I tell someone I went to Cambridge, automatically, for many people, I see them, there's a change. There's a little imperceptible change in either their attitude towards me or how seriously they take me. It doesn't matter what I'm wearing, if I haven't brushed my hair. If I say I went to Cambridge, they think, oh, I'm dealing with someone serious. The other was when I was a chief executive in the charity sector. It was a small charity. It had quite a lot of punch, but it was quite a small charity. But if I went to events where I introduced myself as a charity chief executive, nobody said to me, oh, and how many staff do you have? Nobody said, what's your turnover? They were just like, charity chief executive, that's something you're someone I want to know, that's someone I want to talk to about. So one of the things I find frustrating in life is I've achieved a lot of the things, as I said, that I want to. I feel every time that I meet another person, I start at the bottom in terms of influencing them to think that I'm a person that they might want to do business with, interact with, what have you. And because I'm a person who, for example, doesn't care very much about fashion, and I know through studying influence I should care about it more, one way to signal to people, for example, that you're a serious person is wearing a suit. But I don't want to wear a suit very much. So if I don't have that marker of a suit, for example, which I think of as legitimate businessmen, how am I going to have a way to communicate to people that what I do is serious and important? And just to finish it off, one way to do that would be to have a specific point of focus where I can just say to people, I do this, they can understand that, and we can move on. Rather than I say to people, I do a bit of this and a bit of that, and they don't really understand.
Yeah, I hear it all, and I get it, a lot of it. Like I feel some of it myself, and I know it's difficult, right? And it is this thing, right? We're in this interesting age where not only are you an entrepreneur, but you're a pioneering entrepreneur, basically, because the positions of business is totally different to how it was before, and the way we do business and what business means is different, in society, in the world, and in literal businesses. They're different to how they work. Some of them are exactly the same they've always been, and some of them look nothing like what our grandparents would have thought of as a business. And I want to bring us back in again. So some focus for the rest of the call.
Yeah.
So, because we've probably got 40 minutes left, right? And it's been really rich, and there's loads in there, and it's a nice moment as a coach always when someone says, actually, I've already got this an insight which is very powerful and useful for me. You shared that it might be understanding what's wrong with having a business where you interact with 1,000 one-on-one clients over the rest of your career. That might be the thing that you want to have by the end of the conversation. It might have changed now. And and then what I want to ask, though, I want to try again on that other question, because it's great that you've got something that feels kind of extraordinary. It's cool. And then there's two places you can play at that point. It feels like there's a lot of richness. We could finish the call. We might have got what you need from this, and we can stop it, and that's absolutely fine. It's great. It's wonderful when that happens. It's like, oh, yeah, it's weird. I can high five myself after it. It's like, great, right? We've got something really valuable. You're an action-focused person. You might want to go and do some action right now, and that's great. We might want to go to that place that you spoke about before, about what happens by the end of the call. But I'm wondering, so here's the new question is, we hang up the recording, and you say, wow, Robbie, after that great realization I had in the first half hour, I didn't think it could get any better than that. But that thing that happened in the last 45 minutes, that was really extraordinary. What would have to happen for you to say that?
I think it's about sort of that idea of understanding my own motivations, which links to the thing about why I wouldn't want to do loads of one-to-one for the rest of my life. Because I think one of the things that I find quite difficult is that I don't regularly meet people who are motivated in quite the same way that I am, or in some cases to quite the same lengths that I am. So I am not sure. I have some ideas, but I'm not totally sure why I wouldn't just say, I've achieved a lot of my ambitions. It would be a lot easier in a sort of a stress type way to just get a regular job, like a traditional job, and not a particularly high-ranking one that I could do reasonably well and people would be proud of me. And then I would have that legitimacy where if someone met me, they'd say, what do you do? And I'd say, I do this. Why does that not look good to me?
Yeah, especially if it was like chief exec or like...
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially if it... Or even if it was anything that it would be nice to have something with a tiny bit of status. But even if not, I think just something that was just quite specific. I do one thing. What do you do? I do this. There are a lot of things that appeal to me in that, and yet I don't feel I want to do it. And I'm struggling with why sometimes.
Yeah, and what I hear is there's two sides to this. There's an internal side to it and an external side to it.
Yeah.
But actually, you want to know what it is that really motivates you so that you can make decisions about how to, what was the phrasing? Like how to make the mark on the world that you want to make.
Yeah.
And there's an external motivation. And it's quite common that most people would have both of these going on at the same time, right? But the external one is, what I hear is there's a kind of slight awkwardness that you don't like when you're introducing yourself. And you feel like, and I'm presuming this, right? So tell me if this is wrong. Like, actually, the work you do now is more important and more useful than the work you did when you were a chief exec. So why is it that I used to get the instant status there, and now I get people looking at me like I'm a slightly mad person.
And actually, to clarify on that bit, to be honest, I don't think it's ever that I've never been in a situation where I've introduced myself when I haven't been a chief exec, and somebody's reacted to me in a way that I haven't liked, and I thought, I wish I was a chief exec. It's not that. What I dislike is that, like, because I've done a range of different things, it's hard to have something to hang my hat on and say, I did that. So, like, if you look at people in sport, for example, if you achieve something specific in sport, if you have the British record in 100 meters, you can always say to people, oh, I used to have a British record in 100 meters for the rest of your life. If you win a medal, and those are specific things, and most people would be pretty impressed with that, right? For me, I feel that partly it's a generational thing, where the type of jobs that many people's parents did and the type of job that the next generation did and the one after us and what have you are very, very different. And so it's very difficult to it sometimes feels almost like you're talking past people. I find it hard to explain to my own parents what I do. And they're very interested in what I do, but I find it hard to put into words because there are other things attached to that. You know, my parents were always people who went to a place to do a job, or my dad was a gas fitter, so he went to lots of people's homes, but he didn't work at home most of the time or what have you. So I find those things a little bit sort of tricky, I suppose. Tricky to get my head around. And the change has been so faster in a way than any time in human history, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's no wonder we find these things tricky, I think.
Right, absolutely. And another time, another conversation, that thought might well have come into my head, and I would have been saying it to you. I was saying, like, there's a part of this which is give yourself a break. Well, I guess it is what I said when I said you're a pioneering entrepreneur, like most people who are entrepreneurs now are, because all these probably, well, if you like Seth Godin, he would say, like, since the industrial age, most of our society was set up to produce people and get people who could work well in factories, and work hasn't changed much since then. Even the big multinationals are kind of factories in a different way, and now suddenly we're in this totally new place, and someone like you has to make up. And it's beautiful, right? Because there's a freedom, and it appeals to your side, which loves all these different things, and it allows you to indulge that and learn about everything and work in different ways. But there's something challenging that comes along with that. The back of that hand is difficult.
I think also.
I'm gonna slow us down though.
Yeah.
I think I am going to, because I want to. Because what I hear is, I brought in those idea of the internal and external, but actually what I hear is that underneath there is this thing which will make a difference to you with both of those, both in understanding how to introduce yourself and probably in the feeling you have in those situations, and talking about your work, and it'll help you focus the next bit of your work. And you've said it twice now, and it is understanding what's wrong with that, and underneath what that might give you, the 1,000 one-on-one clients, is the motivation. Is that right? Is that where we should spend the rest of our time?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I have a partial answer to that because it's something I thought about a lot.
So what is it that you'd like to have then by the end?
I think the main thing I'd like to have, and I don't know whether we can have this in this conversation, but being able to talk to you about it is certainly helpful, is that for me, I think it's more like about, I feel like I know myself reasonably well, but I feel it's about being at peace about who I am. So, like, I think that, what a lot of people do when they look at their own life, especially if they're at all self-critical, most people are, is to look at, how they can change things or how they can improve things. But I want to be at peace about things, I suppose. And God.
This is a silly question really, but you can quantify it if you can. How at peace with who you are you right now?
Oh, that's a hard one. I'd say probably 80%. I'd say, and that's partly because I've been on a reasonable voyage of self-discovery and I think about these things. But I think perhaps I'm challenging myself by moving into a space, business, where I feel less comfortable and have less knowledge and experience. And in doing that, it brings up other things that I'm sort of thinking about, which is about my motivation. So when I worked in the charity sector, or did a bit with politics or things like that, it was a bit more obvious to sort of understand why it was that I was doing it, especially with charity, because there's a cause, do you agree with the cause? Whereas now, the beautiful thing and the scary thing is that I can go in all these directions. And the other thing is, being a freelancer, there's nobody to tell me no, apart from myself and my own hang-ups, but also apart from society, because we don't operate in a vacuum. So it's like you're a boss with all the power, but at the same time, you, because of the way that we're conditioned, brought up, exist in society, I suppose, I still perceive a right way of doing things. So when you said, for example, about being a pioneering entrepreneur, I've seen myself as like very slightly pioneering in the various things I've done, but I wouldn't see myself as a pioneering entrepreneur. I might see myself as like a slightly pioneering social entrepreneur, because some of the things I've been working on, not many people have, around young people joining charity boards. But as an entrepreneur, I barely think of myself as an entrepreneur, let alone a pioneering one. So that's a really nice thing to hear reflected back. But I'm like, I would ask myself, if I believed I was a pioneering entrepreneur, what would it then mean that I could do? Like, because surely if I'm a pioneering entrepreneur, then I wouldn't care about being a legitimate businessman, because I want to be pioneering, not legitimate. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, and that's obviously my word, and it may not land for you. I mean, the little extra thing I would add in is, I would think that most entrepreneurs at some point, like, they're humans, and it's easy to forget that. We compare what's going on for us on the inside with what's happening for them on the outside. Most of them probably freak out some of the time about about not being able to explain their work to their mum and dad, and getting looked at weird at networking events and all those kind of things. But I'm going to slow us down again.
Yeah.
It feels like that, it's great to understand that what you really want is to be more at peace with who you are.
Yeah.
And it sounds like from you, there's a idea that understanding this motivation, which is particularly important now you're in business, because it's not as obvious what your motivation is, because business people get into business for all sorts of reasons.
And I have to be self-motivated.
And you have to be self-motivated.
So if I don't understand my motivations, who's motivating me? Right. I don't have a boss to say, oh, you need to do this because it's for the good of it. Aside from needing the money, if I get up and just want to do something else, there's nobody to shout at me.
Yeah. And yeah, I get that. And like, I don't know, like, there's a choice of where to go now. Partly I'm curious, like, how would you know that you're 100% at peace with who you are? Is one question that comes to my mind. I'm going to give you another as well. You can your space. And the other is, we could go to that place, the place of motivation now. And I've got a couple of ideas about how we might do that. So what feels like the right thing? Is it about getting into the understanding, being at peace with who you are, or is it about going now to the motivation question, or is there something else actually? There might be a third thing.
I think it's a motivation question, because I think that I thought a lot about unpacking it and what my ambitions and motivations are and why I have that. And to be honest, I've never come to a conclusion, even though I have lots of ideas. So I feel that would actually be less useful than understanding how would it feel if I was in that situation. Like, how would I feel if I did feel I understood my motivation, I felt authentic and all the rest. So I can move towards that, because I don't know, if I got there, would I ever know I was there? Because at the moment I wouldn't, because I wouldn't even know what that would look like. So sort of unpacking what I don't have that I'd like to have would probably help me work out how I might be able to get there.
And tell me again, just to make it really clear, what is it that you don't have that you'd like to have?
That's what I think we're working out. So I think we're working out, like, for example, so if I have this feeling of that I'm not a legitimate businessman, or that I want to understand, I want to be completely authentically myself, or what have you, what would, like, what would be different? Like, how would I feel when I was there? And maybe also on a practical level, how would that be? Because I feel that like I feel that in that sense, I don't know necessarily where I'm moving towards. Like, I have some thoughts about it. It's difficult to explain. I can't quite.
So I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I lost my attention for a sec or something.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Like there were those two ideas that I put out there. One about understanding when I'm at peace with who I am, and one about going to the motivation. Which of those, or is it something slightly different? Can you tell me where the place we're going now is?
I think it's about the motivation, but it'd be nice if we could go there and see whether that seems to be answering my question, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. And what's the way to go there? Is it to think about the 1,000 clients and what's missing from that, or is it something different?
Yeah, I think it probably would be to go that way. I think that'd be. I don't know, because my problem is that I think my problem is that I'm coming at this with, I already have some ideas of what it is, but I'm trying to leave myself open to. So it sounds weird,
that's interesting, right? Because I've slowed it down, and I kind of deliberately haven't asked. What do you think it is so far? Because I'm interested in how it'll fall out. But great, I've got an idea for how we play that. So it's you might have played these kind of games before, but what comes to my mind is, I'm imagining you're retired. You're near the end of your life.
Yeah.
And you're reflecting back on a career where you, from your mid-30s onwards, you worked with one-on-one clients, and you had an impact with each of them. Obviously different impacts, sometimes really significant, sometimes much smaller. Some of the people then went on to have a significant impact and make a mark on the world, and others did that in different ways. But you're sitting here at the end of your life, and there's a kind of feeling of sadness about that. And I'm wondering what makes you sad after that career at the end of your life?
That's a big question. I think part of it is that I would like to perhaps produce some things that endure beyond me. So, and of course, we all live through other people. And if I inspire some of those people I work through one-to-one, I'm not saying it's
like we both know that that's true, right? We're both, actually, both of us are good at looking at the rational side and seeing the other side. But the sense is actually of sadness that you haven't produced something that will last beyond your lifetime.
I think, and I think it's even more than that. So for me, what this unpacks, and what I think my sort of motivation is, in a way, is that I feel in a lot of ways that I've been very lucky in my life, and the things that I've got to do are extraordinarily lucky. And so I feel that if I don't leave this world having made some, when I say big contribution, I don't mean like a household name. If I haven't done something which kind of like nails my colours to the mast and says, I existed as a human being and I did these things, I would feel that I'd kind of let all the opportunities I've had down. I don't know if I've explained that correctly. When I look at how lucky I am compared to people in more difficult situations, my family background, how nice my parents are, like lots of different things. And so even though I can say, look, I've achieved most of my ambitions, I think my general driving motivation is that I want to sort of stand up and say, I existed. And so the one-to-one client thing doesn't allow for that, because as amazing a work as you could do, I personally feel that lots of people could do one-to-one work. It might be a variable quality, but I don't think that everybody could do the sort of more diverse work that I can do. I mean, everybody can do that work perhaps, but I can put my own spin on that in a way that I don't know that I could through that one-to-one work.
I think that's really interesting. Right? Let me just reflect that back to you.
Yeah.
So actually the sense is, and I love this because I can't know if we've spoken about this before, but I love the idea when I came across it in a book last year of a zone of genius.
Yeah.
Really where where we can make a contribution that no one else can make. And it's been interesting. I've come up across that kind of idea in lots of places. I'm sure you have. But it's such a beautiful idea.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I hear about you at the end of your life, if you've worked with even like a significant number of people, right, 1,000 people, and there's almost no way, knowing you and how the way he's, including the way he's spoken today about ambition and all those things, like there's almost no way that those people haven't gone out and had an impact on the world. So it's, in a way, it's not about impact on the world. It sounds like it's about two things.
Right.
One is a sense, a legacy, a sense, I existed, I did these things. Nailing your colors to the mast. And what I hear in that is a contribution to humanity. And then the other part is, actually, there are other people that could do that one-on-one work. And there's a sense that you, with all the things you've spoken about today, the incredible diversity, the incredible opportunities you've had, the background you came from, the university you went to, the jobs you've taken, the traveling you've done, actually, you would be sad because you haven't done the more diverse work that only you could do. In that combination with that flavor and that sense.
Amazing. Well, that's the second minute of magic for me. That was excellent, because of the two things that you discussed, the first one I have thought about. So the first one in terms of my background and the things I got to do. But I don't think I've ever really thought before about that if I focus just on one thing, unless there was something in that one thing that I think was within my zone of genius. Because, for example, I think that my genius, as it were, is on making connections between different things. Essentially, my genius is not focus. And that's the difficulty for me, is that I perceive genius in focus, the 10,000 hour rule, all these, but I feel that my genius is not in that. And maybe that's where some of my frustrations and lack of understanding of my own motivations comes from. Is that I feel that the things that I'm really good at are not things that fit maybe very, very easily into society, if you see what I mean. They're not things that are easy to quantify. People might say, oh, it's really good how you do that. But it's something, it's a bit difficult to talk about. It's a bit difficult to package up and describe. And that's what I think I struggle with.
Yeah. And it's not the same as something that everyone understands, like the focus of an athlete running 400 meters or the 100 meters or whatever, and having at one point held the British record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it feels to me like even if you find a place of focus and do the work there, the only way that will be the genius is if it incorporates everything that you've done to this point. The dabbling, the diversity, the incredible diversity of interest.
That's it.
All those things.
No, I think that's a really good way to explain it.
And I would challenge slightly the idea that it's not possible to focus on that. That if you like that, it feels counterintuitive, but if your focus really was on it, and I'm not saying that we've got this exactly, this might be the work for you to do, right? It's how do you find that? But if your focus was on, look, here's the zone of genius, it's about connecting people, it's about a diversity of interests, it's about an understanding. If you actually put all your focus on that place, you put all your focus on the diversity, then that could be the place where the impact grows, the mark is made, and the work happens. And it's a counterintuitive thing, but I don't know, does that make sense? I'm not sure if it does, even as I say.
It half does, but I think that for me, the problem is that in order to exist in, a capitalist society, I think that without having a bit more focus, I will always struggle to have a regular income, you see what I mean? So I'm not saying that I couldn't find someone to pay me for doing those things and working that magic and bringing people together. But I think I almost feel like what would probably make me most satisfied is almost like if I was like a monk who got his food from going I've got a wife, so I'm not going to do this, but going like house to house, and someone gives me my dinner. And apart from that, I just go and do things in the world. I work that magic. I'm very attracted to the idea of like the ancient Greek philosophers or something like that. I'm also a person who like spending money on a few things, like going out for meals. So I'm not saying like I'm a hermit or something like that. But what I mean is, I've always, or for a while, thought how amazing it would be if, like, I don't know, some billionaire said to me, I see you're doing decent things in the world. I will pay you minimum wage for the rest of your life, perhaps, to go out and do those things, because I see that your work has value. And then I could just get on with the doing of it. So I think it's kind of, I agree with you that it would be possible to create something. It doesn't have to be around focus. But if the world generally, I think, appreciates focus, people like things that they can easily understand, for me. And that's why we have to package things up a bit. And so getting enough money for things that are a bit more diverse, I can't always work out the logical steps how that works.
Yeah, because what comes up for me as you share that is, now I don't know this stuff, right? I'm not sure it's true, but in different ways, the wisdom popped into my mind there, which, it's not new wisdom, it's probably ancient wisdom, which is why I could talk about it from the book, The Big Leap, where there's Zone of Genius phrase, I learned that, or Gallup and Strengths Finder, or there's another Robert Holden story or quote that comes to my mind now, which is that he says that the next level of your success comes from being more who you really are.
Wow.
And he thinks, and he's written a book called Success Intelligence, so he might know. But he's also interested in ancient wisdom and meditation and the Enneagram and all these kind of things. That's his feeling about everything. Then your next level of success in your relationships comes from being more who you really are. Your next level of success in your business, in all ways, comes from being more who you really are. And I think that I've seen that in my work as well, for me and for other people. And I get that doesn't, just because these people say, and, Gay Hendricks in The Big Leap says really clearly, right? One of the ways you find out where your zone of genius is, you ask yourself the question, what are the things that I've done which have created the most abundance for me in all ways, right? Because that's usually where it is. Because usually if you play in the space which is where the magic really happens for you, in his view, that's where also the money comes from. That doesn't make any of this easy, right? But I guess what I'm offering you is these viewpoints from these people, which I'm pretty sure I believe and feel, that being more who you are is probably the answer here.
Right.
And then there is the question about how you do that and what you do. And
who I am.
Right. And how do you understand that, which is really important. You're absolutely right.
Wow. That's amazing. That's really useful. I think I've got a lot of thinking to do around that. But also I think there also could be a legitimate sort of halfway house. So one thing I think is, in order to exist in the reality of the world, I don't have to be in my zone of genius all the time. So to be happy, I have to be in my zone. If I'm in my zone of genius once a week for the rest of my life, I think I'd be very, very happy. So that means that I could completely flip it, and I could take that job, which was very normal, and have the status, and I could say to people I do that. And then for free, on a voluntary basis, I could do my zone of genius. There's a lot of ways to do that. So it could be that it's not even paid work. I'm saying it like, how can this be paid? Maybe it won't be. Maybe I will do something for free if that is what I want to do. But I hope that I can integrate it into my business, because I hope that the things I like to do and the freedom I like to have as an entrepreneur and as a freelancer, I hope I can build the things in that mean I'm doing my best work the most of the time that I can. Yeah. I hope there's a way to integrate that,
Well, I want to look back to you of maybe an hour ago, a bit less, who said, actually, the practical side of this stuff, I've got that, right? I can do that stuff. So just to give you that back, to say, look, so I think, you hope you can do it, but actually, when you said, if I just focused for 6 months on getting one-to-one clients to get the income I want, I'm pretty sure I could do that, because you've got the confidence from your previous work. I guess the question I'm going to ask, though, is,
Can I just?
Yeah. I'm gonna. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Can I just respond to that, because I think you've actually moved my thinking on, because I think there's mixed up in that two different types of diversity. The diversity we're talking about at the beginning was a diversity on a more practical basis of creating things, right? And hopefully there'll be some of my zone of genius type stuff in there. But the diversity that I think we've gone on to talk about, which I think is quite a new angle for me to look at, is what are the interactions between different things where I really feel that I'm creating something of importance?
What are the interactions between different things where you feel you are creating something of importance?
Yeah. So there's diversity in the way that I get my ideas out there into the world, which might be a course and might be one-to-one. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning, giving myself that space. But what I think we've moved on to reflect on as well is perhaps more of the, what are the things that might or might not make money that I think that I can do that other people can't do? And so how can I build more of those things into my work? So one of those things might be, for example, that I think I'm good at making connections between people who work in different disciplines. And I think it would revolutionize the world if people were out of silos and different people in different disciplines talk to each other a bit more. If I think about how I can do that, I might do that through that suite of products that we were talking about. Or I might do that because that suite of products allows me to get my name out there to more people I have conversations with and can introduce to each other. It's like, it might be the other way around. It might be that I do the diversity in terms of a product, which leads to the diversity in terms of what I think I can contribute, or something like that. Because ultimately, the other thing is that I did the one-to-ones. I love meeting people. And while I love to meet people for one-to-one, I love the idea that if I do a course and it gets out to hundreds of people, instantly there are new people connected with my work who will feed back to me, give me new ideas, give me reflections on my own work that I've never thought about, that sort of thing, It's just interacting with a bigger proportion of humanity somehow.
Which feels important.
Yeah, which definitely feels important to me.
So, we've got a few minutes left. I'm interested in a couple of things. Let me check in. So it's like, I think really broadly, I'm curious just what's coming up for you. What are your next steps? Like, what actions are you going to take differently as a result of this conversation?
I think I need to, but there's quite a few practical things I think I would do. The first one is, I've never really investigated that idea of what I think a legitimate businessman does and why that should matter to me. So I have this, vague idea in my head, but I haven't really thought about that, or whether I want to be like that, or how I'd move more towards that if I don't want to be like that. So I think...
And I'm going to give you an idea for that.
Yeah,
so if you map that out, you then get a choice, right? Because some days, you could wake up and be like, I'm going to be Alex, the legitimate businessman today. or better still, I can't remember who this is from. There's like a business robot in someone's work. And when you're freaking out as a business person because you don't know what to do, and you're really conflating your emotional well-being and sense of self with the business, you just say, okay, well, what would the business robot do? But what would Alex, the legitimate businessman, do? And then you just go like, okay, well, he wouldn't freak out. I'm making it up, right? It was like, if it was me, it'd be like, well, he wouldn't freak out. And I did this on Tuesday, actually, like when a client canceled the last minute. Okay, well, what do I do now that I've been coaching for 3 years? And it's definitely not the same as what I used to do. It's like, okay, well, I don't like freak out and equate someone postponing their session with a sense of me being a decent human being or good at my work. I just respond from, the grown-up adult place. And the sense of confidence that I deserve to have after 3 years of doing this work.
Yeah.
But you could play with that. You could play with, once you know what a legitimate businessman is, well, one thing is you could do the bits of it that sound fun, because I bet there are some bits of it that sound fun, where you could work towards them. Like, I don't know what they are, but I bet there are some good things. Like, I'm making it up. For me, it would be like a legitimate, like my friend Russ, who's a self-employed writer, takes himself out for a Christmas dinner by himself. every like December, and he'll always post a picture on Facebook of it, because what a legitimate businessman would do is celebrate their success and have have a Christmas party. And why should I, as a kind of weird like lonely 30-something in my flat, not give myself that kind of thing?
Well, it's really funny you say that, because it made me think that myself and my wife have a normally monthly meeting rotated between us, where we go to a cafe and sit down and say, what do you want to talk about, and help each other with our work. Now, we're lucky in that we work on some similar things, but because we're both self-employed, we wouldn't have that other than with each other. And so it's really important to do that. And we normally choose somewhere quite nice or go somewhere quite different. So like it's a treat. And although I've always enjoyed it, from looking from an outside perspective, I sometimes think, does that seem a bit odd? I mean, it's my wife. I don't need to go through a business meeting with her. But actually, it gives us that space to say, now we're going to talk about these things.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about these legitimate things. And it gives each of us a space to say, I'm going to hold the floor and this is important to me, sort of thing. But people get probably in their regular businesses when they check in with their manager or their colleagues. So I see how that could work. That's quite exciting.
So I interrupted though to give you the challenge of
what
would Alex the legitimate, or what would any legitimate businessman do in this situation? What else are the next steps?
Okay, so I'd say the other thing is that thinking more about that sort of that zone of genius stuff, but worrying a bit less about whether I think that is completely integrated with my business or not. Which before this call I would have thought absolutely it had to be, but actually I think when you were saying, it was something that you said earlier which I thought was quite interesting. You were saying something about how it was something about like which were the moments that felt most like you were making most of an impact or something like that. And for me, it's things like meeting people at networking events, introducing people to each other through an email. It can be quite things that I don't expect. And what's a way to make more of those things happen is to get my ideas out into the world. So if you said to me, like, how would I increase the opportunities to do that? I would actually do the things that I'm talking about doing, irrespective of whether they bring me in any money.
Right, and here's a sense of the motivation, right?
Yes.
Like some of the motivation is do my absolute best work.
Yes.
And in order to do that, one of the things I might need to do is get my ideas out into the world in these ways that I've been thinking about.
Yeah, and then I think the third thing I'd like to do, and related to that, is so it might be separated from the business, but also I think I want to think about, what are the things that will bring me in money that I can, in order that I can do some of those other things, right?
Yeah.
And yet, can I hopefully do work that, even if it's not in my zone of genius, I think I'm good at and I enjoy? Because as I said to you, I could be like, I'll get a regular job. I wouldn't be like maybe hugely motivated through some of the aspects of that, but then I could have free time to do the things I really worked on. If through my business I can make enough money, it means that most of the time I can do the things I like, and it will present opportunities for me to do my zone of genius things. That sounds amazing to me. Like, that sounds really exciting. And I think I've done that already. What I've never done is I've never thought about it in this way.
Yeah, I hear that.
I've never thought, how do I get those more opportunities in quite a systematic way?
And also it sounds like, but this could be wrong, it sounds like there was a pressure to only do the great work right now.
Yes.
And anything else is like some kind of slight failure.
Yes.
And actually instead it's like, well, what if the thing which allows me to do the great work is getting the other job, or doing the one-to-one work now?
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think so. And also I think that when I was saying to you that I fulfilled a lot of my ambitions, I think I felt that sort of pressure from inside to be like, now that I've written a book, I'd like to write another book, and I'd like it to be published by a publishing house rather than self-published. But if those things don't happen, I still feel very proud that I self-published a book, and I'm proud of that book. And so I feel less pressure now to sort of be like, oh, I have to achieve those things. I feel more about like, how can I share work with the world that I'm proud of? And that's a really good place to be in, because I'm 36, and by, I published my book a couple of years ago, I suppose. So by then I'd fulfilled most of the main things that I wanted to do.
And it feels like, I guess this is an inquiry that I'd offer you. It feels like the type of ambitions that you have now are different to the ones you had whenever you made that list, whether it was 18 or 25 or whatever, the one that you've ticked all the things off.
Yeah.
Something slightly different now. And, we haven't got time to get into it now, but it feels like that's a place for you to, it's like somehow it's a different quality of ambition. I can still see that it's there, but it's about, making the impact on the world, sharing your work, making a contribution. And I guess what I hear is a distinction between outcome goals and process goals. And it feels like there's something now that they're quite outcome goals, like publish the book.
Yeah.
And maybe the thing now is more of a process goal.
Can you explain that? What do you mean by process goal?
No, I don't think I can. I haven't read the book. No, I can. So it's like, okay, here's the frame that I like that I heard the other day. What if your goal is, the frame I thought was beautiful. It's like, my goal is a commitment. And the way you frame it is, I am a commitment to ... And then you just have to live your life as that commitment. So if your commitment is to making a mark on the world, right? Or my commitment is produce something that will last beyond my lifetime. I am a commitment to producing something that will last beyond my lifetime.
Wow.
And then you can play with that stuff on a day-to-day basis. It's like, how am I living today as a commitment to producing something that will last beyond my lifetime? And that might be the place which, again, gives you the freedom. And it might be that the answer to that is, well, it's not this job that I'm doing on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. I'm imagining myself a few years ago. It's like, it's not this part-time job that I have. Exactly. But today, I am a commitment to doing my best work because this job that I have today enables me to do my best work on Thursday.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I think I'm realizing. Yeah.
So that's funny that I can't remember the process goal definition, but it's basically that. It's like, instead of the goal being the thing at the end, it's a goal of the goal is the thing that you do as you do it. The journey is the goal rather than the destination. I got a question for you. Like, you may not know the answer to this. I'm wondering, let's play with a time frame. In 5 years, how much of your time would you like to be spending? How much of your time is it important to be spending in your zone of genius?
Oh.
At a guess, right? And we're playing now because, of course, how do you know, right? What's your instinct? What would you like?
20%.
Yeah. Do you know what's great about 20%? It's 1 day a week.
Right. Yeah.
So my challenge to you is, I think you can do that now. Now, you don't have to, but it feels to me, within the realms of possibility, this is great, right? So this is a coachy trick a little bit, but it's like, it's about what's the dream and then bring it closer. And if we had more time, I might be coaching you more about it. But I'm just telling you, right? Because I've got this instinct that, partly because it's something that I've been playing with myself, and I wondered if that sort of thing was what you were going to say, that it would be small enough. It might have been 5 days a week, and then the question I'd be asking now would be different. But actually, 20% of your time feels achievable. And that might be, I'm offering this to you, it might not be, like, that might be how you going back to the very first question you asked, how you structure your time now.
Yeah.
4 days a week, concentrated, is about creating the one-to-one clients that pay your bills.
Got you.
1 day a week is about creating the products, the services, this suite of things that either is your zone of genius and your great work, or will enable you to do that.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
That's for you to play with.
No, that's fascinating. But also by thinking about where I'd like to get to in the future, as I was saying in my sort of bit of homework, is that I want to trace, if I look at where I feel that I've got to my zone of genius in different bits of my life, what were the commonalities and can they be replicated? And that's what I've never done. I get a feeling that I'm kind of good at this and that this has been, and it's that flow state and all the rest of it. But I've never looked at that critically and said, how can I create more? Apart from a vague sense of, I meet lots of people and get involved with lots of things.
Yeah, I'm going to send you actually, because I pulled out of that. I don't know if the book that that read about the zone of genius, that idea, and it's a kind of funny book, but there's some great, beautiful, loads of beautiful ideas in it, which have really affected my life. I pulled out the questions from that about how you understand your zone of genius. I'll send them to you. They might be a fun thing to play
Really?
through.
Yeah.
They might not, but I'll send that across.
No, thank you.
I'm wondering, this is a funny game as well. No pressure either way. Like, I'm just curious. How at peace with yourself are you right now?
How at peace?
Yeah.
Don't
feel pressured to raise the number just because it's like
What is this on a scale of 1 to 10? What's the?
Well, last time you did it on a scale of 1 to 100.
Okay. I'd say about 70%. 70. Because I think that from this call, I've got a lot of avenues that I think I'm going to work down, which is going to bring that up. So I think that it's kind of quite a weird thing, but like, okay, I don't know how to phrase this in the right way, but this conversation has made me realize that I've got problems that I didn't know I had. Right now, that sounds not good, but it's really good. It's really, really good, because what I realized was, and when I said that first moment of magic, is that in a way I was looking in the wrong place, because when I was trying to explain to you what my problem was, it didn't feel particularly authentic, but not because I was trying to pull the wool over your eyes, because I didn't know myself. So now I can see all these things that I need to think about and that I think I can make progress in. And they're blockages, but I didn't realize those were the blockages. So I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to think, I can look at those things, and maybe that's how I'll make progress, because I haven't been making the progress, So it's great.
I like it. And then tell me, it might have just been that, but before we finish, I like this kind of fun question. Like, if there was one thing from this call that I could guarantee that you wouldn't forget, what would you choose?
I think probably the zone of genius thing. Because I think as well, and it's a whole other discussion, but even admitting you have a zone of genius sounds almost quite like arrogant.
Yeah.
So for example, like there's a few things that I've said, like I've discussed during this call, where I've been quite careful of how I choose my words, because I don't want to appear arrogant. So like even silly things, when I was talking about the sport, I legitimately have met very few people in my life who are interested in as many sports as I am. But when I say that to people, I think that sounds a bit arrogant, because a lot of people are interested in sport, right? But like, I know just because of a sample size of all the people I spoke to, that I'm a bit out there. I'm a bit of an outlier in those things. So I think admitting that I even have a zone of genius, and then thinking more about what that is going to be really useful. Not just in business, but in being satisfied in life, because it might be outside my business. I think I've always thought of it as it has to be a paid thing, and in the past year or so, through some conversations with you and different things, I think I've thought more about how it doesn't have to be that. It could be 4 days of work and 1 day of,
Yeah.
It doesn't. But it isn't that you have to have zone of genius stuff every day. It's just that the more you can have it, the better.
Yeah, and Gay Hendricks in the book, he says it took him I think it was 25 years to work from where he had about 2% to where he had about 90%.
90%.
I think he thought, I can't remember the exact, but he
no,
that
that's amazing.
he worked it out and done the work. But like decades, right? It's like, I hear what you say, that's why I'm sharing that, because it's like, it doesn't have to be straight away. The aim is just like a little bit more and see what happens, a little bit more and see what happens.
That's great.
Love it. Alex, it's been a total pleasure. Thanks for diving in and bringing yourself and your energy. It's been as engaging for me as I thought it would be. And thanks again for playing in this way with the extra thing of the little circle in the corner saying recording. So thank you for that. And look forward to hearing how things progress for you.
Thank you, Robbie. It's brilliant.